Welcome back for another book review. Today we are talking about this one. So this is Becoming the Witch, The Art of Magic. I don't really know how to say the author's first name, but then Moon Thorp or something like that. I totally could be butchering that name. Once again, this is one of those from the library. I really didn't have any indication of what this was going to be. I just randomly grabbed it. I saw the cover and I was like, aight, cool, because I did a search for Llewellyn and this pulled up, so I was like, sure. So going into this without any idea of what it was about, very quickly it became very apparent this is a book for Wiccans. While it does really use the title of witch, it's Wicca. Now it might not be traditional Wicca, but it's still mostly Wicca. It's the idea of the goddess and the god, but then it also kind of flip-flops and then has a lot of like, well then you like put the old gods into the like fitting system for Wicca. Like big one is like Hecate is constantly used because she is the goddess of the witches and she is the crone. Like she was very popular of an option, but the author did try to include other deities, but it was like, I don't know, I didn't really love it, and I don't know if it was like a personal thing or not. Some people were arguing like some cultural appropriation, which I was like, I don't know, maybe, but also it's kind of nice to have like the inclusion. So I don't know where I stand on that one. There was a lot with this book I didn't like anyways, but I don't know if that was one that really bothered me personally, but for other people it might be an ick. Because like, for example, she'll be talking about something and then it's like, well, in Hinduism it's this, well, in Norse it's this, in like the Roman it's this, and also in Greek it's this, and like in Celtic it's this. And so like we just constantly have that over and over and over and over and over for everything, but it never really goes into much depth on any topic really. And I think that was one of the big things that I didn't like about this book, because the majority of this, really, the author is just like, it's a lot of words without saying anything. And like, it's just a lot of fluffy writing. Like that word count is padded, and like you say so many words without actually explaining anything. It's a lot of like that poetry kind of writing. It did remind me of, I think it's like slam poetry, where it's like you're kind of talking, but you're kind of not. It's kind of poetry, but kind of not. I don't know, I think that's what it's called. I've never really been big into poetry, but like I remember when I was getting my degree, like that was something that a lot of people were super into at the time. And like it's that like kind of talking, but like kind of in a poetic way, but like not making sure you rhyme or anything like that. And so it kind of reminded me of that, where we've just got like these really random, like the sentences don't really flow, they chop, and it's very much written like you would speak, but the way we speak and the way we write and read are not quite the same. Now fiction, you can kind of get away with that because it's supposed to be in a character's head and how people are like characters are talking to each other, but in an informative book it doesn't really fit. It feels kind of weird, and so like I didn't really like the writing style. Again, it was very just fluffed and like nothing was really explained very well. This book is definitely supposed to be aimed at beginners, but the information in here is not for beginners. Like nothing is, again, really explained, and like that curve of like learning stuff is like way too steep, where it's like, okay, here's your thing, now you're gonna just use it constantly. Like you need a little bit of a gradual step up here, good lord. And like a lot of the stuff and the spells that is included in here, I don't think beginners should be delving into that. Like, I don't think you should be doing a lot of binding on yourself or others. And like, there's a lot of like love spells that, again, if you're using any kind of binding in there, probably not for beginners. And like, there was just a few of the spells where I was like, I don't know that a beginner, like these are some like more intermediate to advanced techniques that like a beginner probably shouldn't be jumping into. There's a lot of layers into that magic that like, again, not explained enough to make it worth the while for a beginner in the first place. But like, it's because it's not explained, like there's just a lot of layers to it that I don't think a beginner should be trying to do yet. Now like once you know some stuff, sure, but then you should also be analyzing like the why behind it. Why is the author telling you to do these things? Like there was just a lot that really wasn't explained. One of the things that was in other reviews too, and they said something like, if I have to read about salt one more time, and it's like, seriously though. So in a lot of the spells and rituals in here, the author tells you to like just put salt on the ground constantly. You do a spell, you put the salt out all the time. The problem with this is that you make the ground toxic. The salt kills a lot of stuff. There's very few things that can survive through salt, especially if you're doing it frequently. If you cast circle in your yard and then you use salt, don't be surprised when you start to get a ring of dead grass because it can't grow. And if you're pouring it into your garden and then everything's dying, that's why. Like, salt is not great to be just like putting in the ground constantly. That ground takes a long time to kind of dissolve that salt. And like, there's certain things that it's like, sure, but for the most part, like maybe we could not do that constantly. And like, again, the spells and rituals were just really off for me, and like a lot of it I was like, I just don't think this is for beginners. Combining that with the fluff of the verbiage, like there was one that like, I don't know, it's just, this is the page when I flipped to this book that was, because occasionally I'll just kind of flip to a page and be like, what am I getting into? And it was chapter 15, the intro to chapter 15, just to like give you some context of how this book kind of reads. So you have a familiar story. Fall into your imagination. Hear a wild sound from the darkness. A thump hits the ground. Smell the scent of wet earth. See a shady shadow hop by the trees. The creature's feet beat a song through the wind. Its ears have heard every word you have spoken, and all your thoughts have echoed in the creature's lively chambers. Smell mushrooms and taste the moon. Round eyes shine in the dark, whiskers wave to you. The moon hair weaves an ancient spell. Listen, that's just not the kind of reading I want to do when I sit down to read a witchcraft, like, informational book. That's a little too floofy for me. Like, when people say the Silver Raven Wolf was a fluffy, it wasn't this bad. I didn't feel like when I've read her books. Like, that's the kind of, like, fluffed vibe of this book. And it's not always that bad, but like it kind of maintained that the whole time. Where it's like, and again, the choppy of like the sentences where it reads like you need to read it like poetry. Like again, like I think it's called slam poetry. It feels like that's how you're supposed to read it, but like also, no. Like it's just, comparing that to like some of the other ones, I like the other writing styles better. I think it does come down to personal preference. Is this something I would be like, as a beginner, like totally you should go buy this book? Absolutely not. If it's one that like you really love slam poetry style writing, you might enjoy this. Just, you know, keep reading other books because I feel like you need to make sure you know some other stuff. Some people had some issues with other parts of it. Honestly, it's just your basic 101 book. That's the problem with so many beginner books, is eventually you hit this point, well maybe not everybody, I read a lot of books, so maybe I'm a little biased, but like, there's a certain point where it's like, dude, you gotta make yourself stand out, and this was probably not the way to stand out from all of the other Witchcraft 101 books if you're going to write that. Because like, it is supremely overly saturated for content. Everyone has a Witchcraft 101 book, it seems like, so like, how are you gonna make yours stand out? This was flowery, prose, just, ugh. I didn't like it. I don't like books that have that kind of like just fluffed the word count with a lot of random bits just because I just get to the point kind of a reader. So I don't know. That combined with a lot of the techniques that again I feel like really should have been more for intermediate to advanced, and then like the random like salt constantly was just one that other people were like, really? And I'm like, really though? So anyways, I would love to hear your thoughts on this one in the comments down below. Huge thank you to my patrons. I'll have their names over here, make my editing life a little bit easier. And if you would like to also support me, I do have a book coming out relatively soon. Beginning of August, I will be having this book available. This is my witchcraft book. It is The Death Journey, A Witch's Practical Guide to Death. This is my hardback version, and it's going to be coming out hardback, ebook, and paperback, all at the beginning of August. So if you want to check it out, please do. It would mean the world to me. In the process of that book falling over when I went to put it back, it turned on my candle, because I did forget to turn those on. But that's a little freaky when it just falls over and I was like, ah yes, I should illuminate. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I post every single day, and until next time, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.